There are 7 dead cities hidden in Turkey that received the most disturbing messages ever written in human history. They were not addressed to kings, empires, or crowds. They were written for people just like you and me. And here's the scariest part. All 7 of these cities ceased to exist. Each received a direct warning from Christ. Some were praised, others severely reprimanded. But none, absolutely none, survived to tell the story. What if I told you that these letters weren't just for them, that they were, in fact, a coded warning for our time, for you, watching right now? If you want to discover which of these churches represents your life today, hit that like button now and come with me on this journey that will completely change how you see the most misunderstood book of the Bible. The word apocalypse does not mean what you think. It doesn't mean the end of the world, planetary destruction, or nuclear catastrophe. Apocalypse means revelation, to reveal what was hidden, to strip away the mask of reality, and this revelation was given to a completely broken man. John, the last living apostle, was exiled on a prison island called Patmos, a lonely rock in the middle of the Aegean Sea. No resources, no followers, no apparent hope. While the Roman Empire dominated the known world with an iron fist, forcing millions to worship the emperor as a living god, John was there, alone, old, forgotten by the world. It was in this moment of absolute vulnerability that something happened that would forever change the course of human history. Christ appeared to him, not as the humble carpenter of Nazareth, but as the supreme judge of history, with eyes like flames of fire, a voice like the sound of many waters, holding 7 stars in his right hand. And the first thing this glorified Christ did was not to announce cosmic catastrophes. He did not reveal the date of the end. He dictated 7 letters, 7 personalized messages for 7 real communities that existed at that exact moment in Asia Minor. Ordinary people, with real problems, with genuine doubts, with wavering faith, just like us. The journey begins in Ephesus, and get ready, because this story will give you chills. Ephesus was the New York of the ancient world, a powerful, strategic, wealthy commercial metropolis. Here stood the colossal Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, a pagan monument so grand that it attracted pilgrims from all corners of the empire. This is where John lived for decades. This is where, according to Christian tradition, Mary, the mother of Jesus, spent her final days protected from Rome's brutal persecution. The church in Ephesus had it all. Spiritual leaders of the highest level. Paul and John preached here. They had solid doctrine. They tolerated no false teachers. They tested every leader who claimed to have divine messages. They endured persecution without giving up. Christ begins the letter praising all of this. But then comes the devastating blow that crosses 2,000 years and hits you directly now. Nevertheless, I have this against you. You have abandoned your first love. Ephesus did not fall due to external attacks. It was not destroyed by persecution. It did not fail due to lack of theological knowledge. Ephesus died because of spiritual cooling. Faith became routine. Love became duty. Passion became protocol. They continued attending services, but their hearts were no longer there. They did everything correctly out of inertia. How many of us today are exactly at this point? Doing everything technically right, but with our hearts elsewhere? At the center of the ruins is the great theater of Ephesus. Capacity for 25,000 people. An imposing coliseum where everything happened. Theater, politics, commerce, religion. It was here that Paul was almost lynched. The story is brutal. As Christianity began to grow, the artisans selling statues of the goddess Artemis realized they were losing money. Converted people stopped buying idols. The religious economy was collapsing. They incited the crowd. 25,000 people screaming in unison for hours. Great is Artemis of the Ephesians. Great is Artemis of the Ephesians. A wave of religious and economic fury that almost killed Paul. Here we learn something crucial. True faith doesn't just transform lives. It destabilizes systems. It threatens powers. It disrupts structures. If this story is moving you, subscribe to the Sacred Routes channel now and turn on the bell. Because we still have 6 more cities to visit, and each one will reveal something specific about your own spiritual life. The second city is Smyrna, And here there is no criticism, zero reprimand. Smyrna was a poor, persecuted, slandered, hated community. Many were imprisoned, many executed. Loyalty here literally cost lives. And Christ says something deeply disturbing. I know your tribulation and your poverty, yet you are rich. Rich? How can someone persecuted, with no money, no protection, be rich? Because spiritual wealth has nothing to do with material comfort. It is about authenticity, about faithfulness under pressure, about faith that doesn't compromise when it gets hard. Christ does not promise to deliver them from suffering. He promises to be with them in suffering. Be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life. Smyrna confronts us with an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes authentic Christianity does not come with material blessings. Sometimes it comes with a cross. Pergamum was different. It was the political and religious center of the region, the city of imperial cult. Here the emperor was not just respected, he was worshipped as a god. Christ describes this place with frightening words. I know where you dwell, where Satan's throne is. Satan's throne. Think about that. Christ geographically identifies a center of spiritual darkness. Here the pressure was not just social, it was structural, systemic. You either worshiped the emperor or you died, and some Christians died. One of them, named Antipas, was publicly executed for not denying Jesus. But some began to give in, to make concessions, to mix faith with pagan practices. Only outwardly, they said. In their hearts, they were still faithful. Christ's warning is surgical. Spiritual compromises have eternal consequences. There is no halfway faith. Either Christ is Lord of all, or he is Lord of nothing. Thyatira was a prosperous commercial city. Here lived Lydia, the first European woman converted to Christianity, a successful businesswoman who opened doors for the gospel. But Thyatira had a serious problem. A leadership emerged teaching that it was possible to follow Christ and at the same time participate in local idolatry and immorality. An adapted faith, adjusted, convenient. Christ symbolically calls her Jezebel, referring to the Old Testament queen who introduced pagan worship in Israel. Jezebel's Christianity was practical. Let's be realistic, she said. We need to survive economically. We cannot be radical. Let's find a middle ground. And many followed that logic. Christ does not condemn work. He does not condemn prosperity. He condemns the compromise of truth. How many Jezebels exist today? How many voices tell us we can follow Jesus without renouncing anything? Without changing anything? Without disturbing anyone? Sardis was a church with an impeccable reputation, rich, secure, respected. To human eyes, everything seemed perfect. But Christ says something terrifying. You have a reputation of being alive, but you are dead. Dead, imagine that. A functioning church. Services happening, music playing, sermons being preached, people attending, but spiritually dead. A faith of appearance, ritual without life, form without power. Sardis warns us, it is possible to have every religious structure functioning while God has long left the building. Orthodoxy without life, doctrine without love, activity without presence. Is this video disturbing you? Great. Leave your comment now saying which of these churches represents you the most, because spiritual self-knowledge is the first step toward real transformation. Philadelphia was the opposite of Sardis, small, weak, without resources, without influence, but faithful. And Christ has not a single criticism, only promises. Behold, I have set before you an open door, which no one can shut. Philadelphia teaches us that spiritual strength is not in numbers, money, or influence. It is in faithfulness, despite limitations. God does not seek giants, he seeks the faithful. And we arrive at the last one. Laodicea, the most well-known, and perhaps the most current. Laodicea was absurdly rich, self-sufficient, comfortable, had everything, needed nothing, or at least that's what they thought. Christ describes this church with a word no one wants to hear. Lukewarm, neither cold nor hot, the middle ground, a convenient faith, without urgency, without dependence, without intensity. And then comes one of the most impactful phrases in the entire Bible. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Wait, Christ is outside the church? Knocking? Asking permission to enter? Yes. It is possible to have a functioning church where Christ is no longer inside, where he has been gently excluded by our self-sufficiency. Which of these 7 churches are you today? EPHESUS, who lost its passion; SMYRNA, faithful in suffering; PERGAMUM, negotiating truths; THYATIRA, making concessions; SARDIS, dead but appearing alive; Philadelphia, small but faithful; or LAODICEA, comfortably lukewarm. John received all this in exile, alone, forgotten, broken. The apocalypse does not begin with catastrophes. It begins with churches being examined by Christ's gaze. The 7 cities became ruins, silent, forgotten. But the 7 letters crossed millennia and remain alive, waiting to be heard. The question is, in which of these churches am I today? Like this video and leave the word revelation in the comments if you understood that these letters were not just for them. They were for you.